Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Welcome to Parenting in the 21st Century. I'm Zina Shevchik. Today, we're fortunate enough to have with us Lisa Heywood-Drake, the Youth Employment Advisor at the Town of Colonie Youth Employment Service. She's here to talk about what information gathering young people need to do before even starting to look for a job. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Glad you were able to make it. I know you're a very busy woman. Today I'd like to concentrate on the job-seeking skills information you, your office, your website make available to the 16 to 21-year-olds in Colonie. But first I'd like you to tell us and our audience generally about what you and your office do all year round.
Okay. Town of Colonie Youth Employment is part of the Youth Services Division in the Town of Colonie. Youth employment's been around since about 1969. It has looked very differently through the years as Colonie has grown. Several things that I do is I maintain a website regarding available positions for young people. So I work with the business people in the community. I also am responsible for several other hats. I work with the South Colonie School District with their GED program, working with young people, teaching them employment skills in that group. I spend 2 days a week at Shaker High School and 2 days a week at Colonie Central High School, working with students there in what's called our Preparation for Employment program, which is a long-term skills building program. Many of the same skills you see on our website, but over a longer period of time and more intensive and related to that particular young person.
And interactive is what
Exactly,
you're saying.
exactly. So I meet with students in the school on a weekly or bi-weekly basis over a longer period of time. So it's very specific to that young person. My colleagues and I at Youth Services also do Global Youth Service Day. Okay? And in our department we also have summer camp programs, wraparound programs for kindergarten students, and several other programs that we work with. So I don't have a lot to do with those programs, but I've been with Youth Employment since 1984. So pretty busy as far as working with the business community, the parents, the students, the schools.
You're certainly Jack of, what do you say, Jane of all trades? Jane of all trades.
Something like that.
Can I just ask one question about
Sure.
you before we move on to the primary focus of our conversation today? You mentioned something I don't know about. You mentioned the pre-employment skills program in the school system. Is that something that kids sign up for in their school district, or teachers, counselors request?
Typically, students are referred through either guidance counselors, special education teachers, school social workers, recommend young people for the program because they're students they feel can really benefit from it, and it's something that will really be helpful to them in their own self-advocacy as they're growing up.
Is that something that you would recommend a child or a parent to go to a counselor in the school system and ask about, or is that really works the other way?
We've been in the schools for a very long period of time, so a lot of the teachers are aware of the services we provide. So typically those referrals will come from them. Okay. On average, I have about 36 students between the two school districts. So that's about the size of my caseload between the schools.
I understand.
And I have a wait list right now.
I bet you do.
Yeah.
I bet you do. I bet, and particularly in this day and age, in this economic situation we're all in, that it must be the job searching skills have and pre-employment preparation must be in high demand.
Oh, absolutely. And it's the type of skills that, these are skills that every single young person needs. And making it unique to that young person, assisting them in areas where it's helpful to them,
right,
and helping them with where their strengths are, with where their weaknesses are, so that they can really achieve at a very high level.
Right. So the nub of what I want to talk about is all laid out nice and neatly on your wonderful website, which we'll give the address of later in the program. You have a process outlined on your web page in kind of several short titles, 9 steps or categories of information gathering you recommend young people go through to help themselves get and keep a job that is suitable for them. And I told you before we came on camera that I like the way it's set up on your website because you give all the preparation for what you need to do before you actually initiate the job search, before you provide the link to the job listings that you aggregate. So could you tell us about the process that is on your website, that is highlighted on your website?
Surely. The information that's on our website comes from multiple sources. Part of it is conversations with the business people that I've worked with over the years. Areas where they find young people consistently run into difficulty, or why a young person may not have gotten a job or may not have gotten to the interview stage. So we have that aspect from what the business community. We have typical things that young people have come in and asked over and over and over again through the years. Just because of life experience, they haven't done it yet. It has nothing to do with their intelligence or their ability, they just haven't done it before.
They're inexperienced.
Right, exactly. So what we did is we took all that information from both of those areas, as well as parents' questions parents were asking us, and we kind of pooled it. So very often people will come in and they think getting the job is the answer. And I kind of chuckle and say, no, that's our ending point. That's not our starting point. One of the things kids and I usually laugh about is when I say to them, well, what type of work are you looking for? And I think you and I had spoken about this off camera, is their answer is always, oh, anything.
Right.
And I always start to chuckle and say, probably not, okay? Because not all of us have the same set of talents, skills, and abilities. So the example I give the young people is I have never been remarkably good with numbers. I am not a good math person. Won't do the checkbook without the calculator sitting next to me. It does not make sense for me to go after a career area using large amounts of math. It is not going to work well for me. Okay? Number one, I'm probably not going to get the job, and number two, I'd probably lose the job. So you kind of show them that it's okay to look at their strengths and weaknesses. So one of the first things we talk about on the website and in workshops I do when working with students is doing a little bit of a self-assessment to find out where it makes sense for you to be looking. And there's several resources we give kids on where they can do self-assessments. Okay, some of them can be as simple as what I call the 3 circles, which is kind of something I created to demonstrate it to young people. If you're trying to look at what your strengths and weaknesses are, start out by thinking, okay, first circle, academics. Each one of us can look at a report card and know where we're stronger and weaker, or something I really struggle at, I have to work a little harder at, it doesn't come easily to me, as well as this comes so easily to me, I can do it in my sleep. Okay? Then we look at what I call the second circle. If I went and asked your family and your friends, what are you good at and what are you not good at? What feedback would they give you? And be ready for the fact that you may not like the feedback, okay? Somebody may say, well, you're not very good at. Before you get angry at somebody, just saying to them, okay, give me a little feedback. Tell me why, okay? And hopefully the person will give a constructive, not destructive criticism, okay? Because constructive feedback is going to be to help them grow, whereas destructive criticism is more hurtful.
Yeah, it ruins their self-confidence.
Right, exactly. So looking at giving constructive criticism, because that's something all of us want.
Right.
And then the third circle is what they do for fun. Because very often, young people will be remarkably good at something and not even realize it's a talent.
Right.
I've had young people who can strip down an engine, put it back together, and they've never taken a small engines class. That's a talent and a skill. So, kind of looking at little self-assessment.
Right.
Okay? But there's also formal self-assessments they can do. And we give young people on our website a variety of websites they can go to do that.
Right.
One of them is New York State Department of Labor Career Zone. And there's multiple other self-assessments they can use.
Well, a lot of what you are saying pertains to anyone looking for
Absolutely.
work. And
Absolutely.
it's not just young people. That was the other thing I was struck with when I was looking at your website was, wow, this could be helpful to just about anybody. I mean, some of it's obviously geared toward people who are totally new, but a lot of people get work and they've never really done a self-assessment. So that concept is certainly applicable.
Absolutely. And even if you have an adult who's maybe changing careers and looking
Right.
to go on to do something different,
Right,
reassessing where you are now as opposed to when you started a career.
right,
You have different set of talent skills, you may want to go into a different area.
Right.
So it really is applicable to everyone. So one of the first things we talk about is figure out what makes sense for you first. The other thing we talk about in the steps to help yourself get a job is many of the young people will come in ready to work but don't have the documentation and the paperwork they need to work.
That's probably the most. I remember that when my kids were 16.
Yeah.
What do I need? What's a working paper? What is that? Right?
Exactly, exactly. So we talk about making sure you have the types of identification forms you need to be employable, because if you don't have those, you're not going to be able to become employed, at least legally
Right.
employed. Okay, so making sure they've followed the steps to get all the paperwork that they need. Okay,
Right.
so we talk a lot. Do you have your Social Security card at home? Do you have your number memorized? We talk about the safety of a Social Security number. It's not something you're going to be blabbing all over the place, and why. Okay, when you use it, when you don't use it. Okay? Getting working papers, okay, through their schools. We talk about having something that proves, like a birth certificate that proves who you are, okay, and a photo ID, whether that be a school ID, okay, permit, driver's license, non-driver ID.
And this is where parents come in, getting
Absolutely.
all this paperwork together. So.
Absolutely, and parents will have to sign for the working papers.
Right. Right.
Okay. Yeah, and absolutely, and very often it can be just going around helping the young people get all that paperwork together.
Right.
Okay, knowing yes, you do have a Social Security card, but it's locked up here at home. Okay?
Right.
But when you need
Mom, do I have a Social Security number?
Exactly. So we start out talking about get some of those preliminary things out of the way. Okay. Then we look at how do you do some research. Okay. Very often, even though it's a kind of a career planning tool, it also helps students in the short term look at what they might enjoy doing. Okay. Department of Labor has a wonderful part of their website with a place called Career Zone. We'll ask kids a series of questions about themselves, and then based on their answers, tells them the types of jobs they can look for.
Career Zone. You said.
Career Zone, yep. Again, it's very much a career-oriented site, but it gives kids a way to start looking at how do I assess my talents and skills.
And that link is on your webpage.
Yes.
Which we'll give at the end.
Absolutely. And I also do self-assessments with students, just asking them, I like this, I don't like that. And there's many, many of them out there that can be used. Okay. So after they've done sort of that preliminary, then we start thinking about things like, if you were going to do a job search, how would you do it? And it's interesting, with this generation, the first thing I hear is the internet. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, it is a tool, absolutely. But there's about 16 different resources out there that can help yourself get a job. So in many of my workshops, I talk about, here's all the resources you can use. I will give the kids the websites. I will give them, here's some ways that you might not have thought of that you can use. We talk about what we call hot and cold contacting of employers. Hot contacting being, a job's available from one of those resources.
Right.
Okay? How do you contact that employer? If they want a phone call, what is it you say? And many of the young people will start laughing immediately and say, my mom and dad make all my phone calls and my appointments. What do I say? So what I did is I took that information, I put it right on the website for them, because it's kind of like all of a sudden, okay, your responsibility. And they go, oh, what do I do? So very often I'll actually do mock conversations with young people and let them practice it. And then the kids who know me well, if they see this, will laugh, because I will then say to them, okay, now I'm going to try to mess you up. Because every phone conversation does not go exactly as you think it's going to go in a certain order, and you have to know how to kind of negotiate that.
Right.
If you get a simple thing of, he's not here. You'd be amazed the number of young people who are absolutely baffled and don't know what to do at that point. So we say, okay, let's think through how we would handle that. You know, those kind of things that you almost take for granted because you've been doing them for years, but you forget that when you were younger, someone else did them for you.
Yeah.
So I encourage parents to, as the kids are getting older, encourage them to start making the appointments. Help them with those phone calls. Maybe set up their own doctor appointment. Call the dentist, whatever. Getting used to what's going to be expected from the business community in a phone call.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that was one. I remember when my daughters, for the first time, were making their own appointments, and it was exactly that. What do I say? And to me, it was, how could you not know what to say? You've been listening to me for 16 years,
Right,
you know,
exactly.
on the phone. But no,
Exactly.
actually, they've been tuning out, which is another reason I think your service is so good, to have an adult other than a parent telling a teenager in particular how things are, because sometimes they do just block out the parents. Now, this is a parenting show, so maybe the best advice is, get somebody else to help you with some of this stuff.
Well, you know, the really interesting thing is, all the years I've been in youth employment since 1984, kids are not blocking out their parents.
They're not.
They're not. They hear the messages, they understand them. Sometimes it's more of a matter of taking that independent step and growing in their own independence.
Okay.
And I get feedback from kids all the time, and they'll kind of giggle and say, yeah, my mom told me that. Okay. They will tell me things they might not tell their parents, but they are paying attention.
Okay.
They are.
Well, I do know that,
Yeah.
you know, when I listen to what's on the media, they say that whether you think they're watching or listening, they don't seem like that. They are.
They
So
are.
You have to be a parent. That's you're always a role model, no matter what.
Oh,
a parent.
absolutely.
And even when you think they're totally tuned out. So that's a good point. That's a very good point.
You know, it's interesting because one of the things that when we talk about getting a job and kind of where's your money going to go,
Right.
we'll very often talk about a little bit about budgeting.
Right.
And I've had young people say to me, I need to go home and thank mom and dad because all the things are provided for them and they're sort of almost taken for granted. When they start seeing, you know, they get that first paycheck
What's involved?
and how quickly the money goes,
Right.
it gives them a very quick change of perspective.
And that's why working is a good activity, even if they don't need the money. It's a very good. Besides skill building, it's lifelong skills. You know, things that you'll use your whole life.
Oh,
So-
absolutely. And whether it's a paid or a volunteer position, I mean, one of the things I talk about on the website is if you're not able to find a paid position, get a volunteer position. It's still a work history. You'll still get references. You'll get to explore some career fields to find out, gee, I really love this, or no, I really don't love this.
Right.
It's a wonderful tool that students can use. And I found a lot of students who have volunteered liked it so much they stayed on. Once they got a paid position, they continued their volunteering work.
Right. Exactly. Would you talk a little bit about like dressing for success?
Sure.
Because you know, this is a very casual world we generally live in, and I certainly know that schools are casual compared to what I mean. I was still had to wear a skirt to school, a public school, when I was in high school. So it's a very different world, and so the transition to the business world must be a little bit trickier now.
It is, and it's trickier for those of us who are teaching those skills also, because the environment the young person works in may dictate the dress code,
Right.
and that's always been true. But one of the things we talked about is things you can do that you can't be wrong. So, for example, if a young person wanted to apply at a service station for a job, okay, they're not going to be wearing a three-piece business suit unless they're going to be an owner, a manager, etc. But a nice pair of khaki pants, a dress shirt that's been pressed, right? The impression, a lot of employers have said to me, I look for the person that I know I can move up. So don't look at the position of where you're starting, look at where you may be able to get to. So we talk about things like, okay, if I'm going for a job as a bank teller, should I be wearing jeans and a t-shirt? And immediately the young people go, oh no, that's not what I would expect to see there. So we talk about different levels of formality depending upon the setting. But we also go over, here's what you can do as a young person to be a little dressier than you may be for the school setting, not all the way to the suit, but presenting yourself as a young professional person. The college students that I work with, different issue. We may be looking at a little even higher level. Okay, and again, that has changed dramatically since I started in youth employment. When I started, it was a much more formal interviews across the board. It has gotten a little less so in a lot of settings. What some places will consider appropriate now, I would say 15 years ago weren't. So I kind of have to take a look at trends, talk with the business people, say, in your particular setting, what are you going to be expecting to see?
Well, there, right there, they have what a resource in you and what you put on your website, because you are talking to the business community. And so you're getting up to the minute, in effect, requests or attitudes or expectations. So.
Absolutely. I've had some business people that I've spoken to that have said, you know what, I know these are young people. They may not have the quote-unquote dressy clothes for an interview, but if they come in, they're looking neat, they're looking clean, you know, their hair's clean, it's nicely styled, their teeth are brushed, but maybe they have on a nice pair of jeans and a nice shirt, okay? But it's not way down here, it's not way up here. I'm really going to talk to that young person and say, I realize you're starting out, and they may be given opportunities. So what we look at is kind of, if you will, the faux pas that are going to be things you don't want to do anywhere.
The don'ts.
The don'ts. Now, you know, these are the type of things employers will look for. And the research has actually shown the first 10 seconds of a job interview dictates if you really have a chance. And I always tell the kids, all I did was look at you.
Whether it's fair or not, this
right,
is the
exactly,
way it is.
Exactly. And, you know, we don't like to think we're judgmental as people, but we tend to be.
Right.
Because we look with our eyes.
Right. And we usually have, certainly employers don't have a lot of time to go through the process, so they make their decisions snap in some way. Snap. They have to because of time.
Yeah.
So.
And they also look at, does this person fit the image of what I'm looking for in terms of, you know, if you and I walk into a very formal business office,
right.
What do we expect to see?
Right.
You know, there's different settings that we're going to have a different set of expectations of what we're expecting to see when we go through the door.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes my understanding is that sometimes young people have difficulty grasping why it's so important to dress for, you know, the occasion. But when they do, it's telling the employer that these young people are willing to be flexible enough to fit into whatever
Adaptable to that setting.
work environment.
But you know, that's also true of adults.
Yeah.
It's very often you'll talk to people who say, well, it's me they're interviewing, not, you know, my appearance.
Right.
Okay, it's both.
Yeah.
It's both. And for young people that I work with who may not have the appropriate clothing for a setting, we talk about how can you solve that problem. And it can be a simple matter of borrowing something for the interview, maybe going after a position where you're going to have a uniform,
Right.
so clothing isn't going to be an issue. Okay, so if money's very tight and you're thinking, you know, I'm not going to have all these things to go to work with, how do we solve that problem?
In kind of in the same tack as far as today's environment versus the past, I know kids today text and they abbreviate their spelling and the whole formal interaction, whether it's with a resume or a cover letter or a thank you note or the etiquette on the phone, because a lot of them aren't used to the phone, not just for making appointments, but the whole idea of interacting with a receptionist or, you know, that kind of thing is very alien to people today, not just kids, but also children.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and one of the things we talk about when we talk about those hot and cold contacts of employers, we also talk about that first impression when you come in and introduce yourself to someone. Very often the young people will start laughing when I'm working with them. I'll say, we just started in the middle of a conversation. Who are you? And all of a sudden they go, oh, you know, because they're used to just engaging in conversation.
And Facebook, that's it. It's all, it's not face-to-face, and there's very little formality, yes.
And one of the things that we talk a lot about is exactly those things you're talking about. Texting is becoming more commonplace in the workplace, okay? It's used all the time now, okay? Once you're in a job, there may be a set of rules that apply, and there may be another set of rules as you're going into the process.
Right.
So, and I think as you're finding, because the technology is changing, that's going to become more and more acceptable in the workplace. You have the people who are coming in, the 20-somethings into the workplace, is drastically changing the workplace.
Right.
Yeah. They've talked a lot about, right now we have multiple generations in the workforce and different expectations of those generations.
Right.
Where someone my age may see something as rude, another young person might say, but that's how we communicate. You know, so it's, I've been to multiple workshops where they've talked about melding those different generations into the workplace because the expectations are different.
Right. So the person next to you seems like an alien, right?
Yeah.
How do you communicate with an alien?
Yeah. So it's very interesting because it's not something that's young people are being rude. It's a different way of communicating.
Right.
But what we do talk about is, one of the things you said is things like making sure your grammar, your spelling, your punctuation is correct. One of the things I talk a lot about is if I call your cell phone right now, what am I going to hear on the other end?
I saw that on your website. I thought that was something I never have thought about. That's fascinating.
And it's interesting because when the young people realize that, they start to say, oh, and they realize it themselves. So sometimes we have them change their voice message. Okay? I say, what is your email address? And I give examples in workshops that kids have given me permission, you know, I've taken out distinguishing things, but of an email, I'll flip it over and I'll just say to the students, what does this mean to you? And I'll see here giggles or I'll hear laughs or that's what an employer just did. And all of a sudden the light bulb goes off and they go, oh, that may be okay for my friends, may not be okay for appropriate for job seeking. Right. So sometimes it's changing an email address. All those type of things are all part of that whole package that you create. We also talk about, you know, use of electronic media, web pages. You know, once it's out there, it's out there. Okay, so they need to be very cautious about how they're using social media sites.
Apparently, I've been reading that employers do check.
Absolutely.
They do Google people's names and you know, see what comes up. So yeah, I know they talk about tagging on Facebook and how your name can come up on a less than attractive or appropriate picture sometimes.
Oh, there's all kinds of things that can be done.
There's all kinds of trouble that people can get into for the rest of their lives. You know, and it follows them.
So. Absolutely,
So.
absolutely. You know, the other thing that we talk about is students preparing for questions that may be presented to them.
So the interviewing kind of process.
The interview process itself. Also the application process. This generation is doing a lot online, okay, and I have many, many kids coming to me saying they're having trouble with the online applications because sometimes there's an answer they want to give that they can't give. It's just not possible with the way it's set up. So, you know, there may be, you know, the paper application, there may be the online application, there may be, you need to email a resume and attach a cover letter, okay? Especially the younger students will say, they told me to apply by email, what do I say? You know, and there has to be formality to it,
Right.
okay? So we talk about a lot of those kind of things. We also talk about very typical interview questions that come up regardless of age. They're very typical. You know, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? So they're not in a situation where that's the first time they thought about that question. I don't want them to memorize, but I want them to think ahead.
And young people, probably a lot of them haven't had the opportunity to talk about themselves in a positive way to a stranger. So selling themselves in effect. So that's it.
Yeah. Many of the young people have done interviewing skills in their classrooms. Some have not. Others need a little bit more time to practice it. Okay? And again, depending what area they're going into, maybe the types of questions they're going to encounter. So I can't give them every question they're ever going to see.
Right.
But I can give them, here's some generic ones that tend to be very standard that you can think about and prepare yourself for.
Role playing, and that's one of perhaps a parent could get involved with some kind of role playing whether they're making a phone call or having an interview. And could you talk a little bit more about that? How parents
Sure.
can help their kids in this process?
Well, there's a couple ways. Role playing, definitely. Okay. The second thing is making sure your child is aware of legal and illegal questions. So if someone asks them something they're not supposed to be asking them, how do you handle that in a diplomatic way? And very often I'll talk with students about that. Okay. Also helping young people to recognize if they truly don't understand a question in an interview. Okay. A parent could say to a student, it's okay to say, I'm not sure I understand your question. Mm-hmm. Because very often the young people feel like, well, I'm going to look stupid. I'm going to look, no, you're just asking for clarification.
Right.
That's true at any age in your life.
Right.
It's something that truly doesn't make sense. It may be as simple as saying, I'm sorry, I was listening. I'm not sure I understood the question. Could you rephrase that for me? And it's a very nice way of saying to the interview, I really didn't understand.
Right.
You know, and that's something parents can work with children on. If you really don't understand something, how do you ask for clarification so you're not feeling like you're on the hot spot and don't know what to do and then freeze?
You have a really good list on your website of possible interview questions, and that young people and their parents, or even the young people themselves, can role play. I thought that was wonderful. I think your website is wonderful. Could you talk about the job listing that you
Sure.
actually do have on your page? And you mentioned to me off camera about getting human resources people or other businesses interested in this list in the area.
Absolutely. We maintain a list of job openings in the area. What I put on my website is the job title, the age under labor law at which that particular employer needs to hire, so that a young person will know, and if there's an employer that can't hire under the age of 18, they're not going to go apply there. It saves the employer time, it saves the young person time. I give a little bit of information about where the employer is, how that particular employer would like the young person to apply, and a little bit of detail about the position.
Are all these jobs within the town of Colonie?
I would say probably the majority of them, but we have a young population who's pretty mobile.
Right.
So, but we do, I mean, you think of Colonie, it's 54 square miles, so it's a pretty big town.
Right.
Okay, so the majority of them, yes, but we'd also have listings for larger malls in the area. We may have a business who needs one person in the office. They may not be in Colonie, but they're reachable by the bus line, that type of thing. They may also be listed.
Right.
Okay. A lot of these businesses we've worked with for many years. There are some positions on the site that are very seasonal. If you look on the site now, you'll see a whole category for lifeguards, camp counselors, etc. Okay. Obviously, very seasonal positions. Youth employment has kind of an ebb and flow to it. We have a lot of positions during the summer, some that are year-round positions, and then some that will be seasonal again. We always designate that on the website too. So if a young person's looking just for the summer, they know that's an employer that hires for the summer season. The other thing I've listed on the site is other resources available to young people. We went through and we found websites that work really well for high school and college students that they can use. We kind of pre-screened them a little bit to help them with very certain types of jobs. For example, American Camping Association is going to be all camp counseling jobs, that type of thing. So those are listed. If we get a training program that comes through, we would list that on the site. Okay. We call attention to how to get to the New York State Department of Labor website, because again, it opens up a whole nother world for young people to look at. So
I appreciate your being here with us today. Before I end, is there anything you'd like to recap or emphasize? I mean, you do want businesses to contact you if they have positions open for young people. I know you were talking about that, and your phone number is going to be on our on the screen. And you want to talk about that just a little?
Sure. If there are any businesses in the local community that are looking to hire young people, age 16 to 21. We have some employers that hire 14 to 15-year-olds. We'd love to hear from them. All they need to do is contact me. And basically what I would need from them is the name and address of their business, the job title, the job description, pay scale, hours that they need someone, the age under labor law that they need to hire, and how they would like the young people to contact them. And usually I take a contact person, phone number, email. We will keep that information up on our website as long as an employer needs it there Typically, I leave them up 8 to 10 weeks, unless an employer calls me back and says, I found someone that first week, you can take it off the site. And then I'll contact those employers back 8 to 10 weeks later and revamp everything on the website and add anything new. So we would love to hear from area employers who would like to hire some young people.
Great. I have one more question.
Okay.
This is the question I always thought would be the most frequently asked. Where do you get working papers?
You get your working papers from the school that you attend.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Lisa Drake. I just lost your middle name. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That's your Lisa Heywood-Drake,
Yes.
Youth Employment Advisor, Town of Colonie Youth Employment Service. You've been a great service. You've done a great service today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
That's it for today, Parenting in the 21st Century.